Let's return to our top story on the war in Ukraine. The U.S. House of Representatives have voted overwhelmingly in favor of providing an additional $40 billion in aid to Ukraine. For more on this, we can cross live to Washington, speaking to Arise US Correspondent Eric Ham. Thank you for joining us, Eric, this afternoon. Can you tell us more about this aid package and what it entails?
Yeah, this package passed last night. The House of Representatives passed it. And here's what's interesting. President Biden specifically requested $33 billion. Congress got a little more aggressive, which is what we have actually seen throughout this war in Ukraine. The Congress actually being far more aggressive than the president on of providing resources to Ukraine. And so they went above and beyond what even the president asked for. They added an additional amount of resources for both security and humanitarian aid. But again, it passed overwhelmingly. However, there were 57 members of the House of Representatives that did not support this supplemental package. All of them were Republicans, and one of the overwhelming reasons we heard from Republicans for why they did not support this package is because they said that it would add to the debt and that there was not resources to actually pay for it. There were no offsets to provide the resources for this, but it overwhelmingly passed. Now it has to go through the Senate, where it also is expected to pass there. One of the major hangups that many thought would actually trip up this bill or would delay it was that we know that the White House was also requesting additional resources for COVID relief funding, and many thought that these two packages would actually be put together. However, that did not happen. This Ukraine legislation was able to pass individually, and now it goes before the Senate, and it is expected to actually get to the president's desk to begin another drawdown of billions of dollars to Ukraine to continue to fight against Russia.
Well, Eric, President Biden made it pretty clear that supporting Ukraine would not come cheap. So how long is the U.S. prepared to support Ukraine in its fight, and does it have the support of the American people?
Well, right now, the American people are overwhelmingly in support of the United States providing support for Ukraine. However, what the American people do not want is they do not want to see U.S. troops, U.S. boots on the ground in Ukraine fighting against Russia. President Biden has committed that there will not be U.S. troops on the ground, and so far he has maintained and kept that promise. This round of funding, this $40 billion that now goes before the Senate for passage, this money is expected to actually last over the next 5 months. So already we know the fighting has lasted at least 75 days, nearly 3 months. This is expected to go an additional 5 months. What happens after that will be anyone's guess. Remember, right now in the United States, there is preparations for a midterm elections, and we simply do not know what will happen by then. We do know that, however, that yesterday, the Director of National Intelligence testified before Congress saying that they are expecting a long, protracted war and that Vladimir Putin is prepared for the long haul. So, of course, right now, we don't know what will happen, but clearly what the administration is hoping is that in 5 months, those crippling sanctions that have been enacted on Russia by the United States and other Western powers will begin to have an impact on Russia, and that might be the difference. Also, we have to remember that the European Union is now actually debating to end those dependence on Russian oil and gas, and of course, that could also be a game changer by the time this nearly $40 billion in supplemental aid actually runs out.
Eric, let's move away from Ukraine. The U.S. Senate is set to vote on abortion rights. Tell us what will be happening later.
Yeah, this is a consequential vote that will take place in the U.S. Senate today. Now, keep in mind, this vote has already happened. This vote took place back in February. It did not pass the Senate. It's a vote to actually codify into law that a woman's right to choose, that Roe v. Wade is the law of the land. And so what we're talking about here is 50 years ago, the Supreme Court actually struck down the law and made it a right for a woman to have an abortion. But it was never actually introduced in legislation or actual law. And so what we have seen back in February, and what we're going to see today is the Senate attempting to try to make it a law that a woman has a right to an abortion. However, this law today is expected to fail in the Senate, and we do know that 2 Republican senators are attempting to try to work up bipartisan legislation to codify this into law. It's unclear exactly when that legislation will be drafted and when it will actually come before the Senate floor for a vote. But even though we're expected to see this legislation fail today, we do know that a number of other states are already working on codifying legislation that makes it a woman's right to choose. In fact, California has said that they are now working this up after the leaked opinion was presented, that it is now expected that the Supreme Court will actually strike down Roe v. Wade.
A lot of things going on in the U.S. Thank you so much for joining us and explaining some of the issues, Eric Ham.